When my husband passed away 4 years ago, I received $800,000 in life insurance. I never told Richard, the man I started dating a year later, the exact amount. And that decision didn't just save my financial security. It saved my life. Literally. I'm 62 years old now, and I've learned that grief makes you vulnerable in ways you never expect, not just emotionally, but practically. People can smell vulnerability the way sharks smell blood in water. And I almost became prey. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Eleanor, and I was married to Thomas for 34 years. He was a good man, a postal worker who never missed a day, who kissed me goodbye every morning and hello every evening. We had a simple life in our small house in Columbus, Ohio. 2 kids, both grown and living their own lives in different states. Sarah's in Portland with her family, and Michael's down in Atlanta with his. We weren't rich, but Thomas was careful. He always said, "Ellie, if something happens to me, you'll be taken care of." When the cancer came, it came fast. Stage 4 pancreatic. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. I was 58 years old and suddenly alone for the first time since I was 24. The life insurance was something Thomas had through his union. $800,000. It was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. More money than we'd ever had in our joint account at any one time. I paid off our mortgage immediately, put most of the rest in a trust, invested conservatively, kept maybe $50,000 accessible for living expenses. I told my kids I'd received a good policy payout, but never the exact figure. They didn't ask. They knew their father had been responsible. For a year, I barely left the house except for groceries and church. I wasn't ready. My friend Martha kept telling me I needed to get out, meet people, live again. "Thomas would want you to be happy," she'd say. I knew she was right, but I wasn't ready. Then Martha convinced me to join a grief support group at the community center. "Just try it once," she said. "You don't have to talk, just listen." That's where I met Richard. He was 60 years old, silver-haired, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He'd lost his wife to a stroke 2 years prior, no kids. He talked about loneliness in a way that resonated with me. After the meeting, he asked if I'd like to get coffee. I said yes. The first few months were nice. Richard was attentive, patient. He understood grief. We'd take walks, have dinner, watch old movies. He never pressured me for anything. It felt safe. It felt like maybe I could be happy again. Then he introduced me to his brother Frank. Frank was 55, never married, lived about 20 minutes away. He was louder than Richard, more brash. He'd show up at Richard's apartment when I was there, always with some story about a business deal or an investment opportunity. Richard would laugh him off, but I noticed Frank's eyes, the way they calculated, the way they assessed. About 6 months into our relationship, Richard started asking questions. Casual ones at first. "Did Thomas have good benefits through the post office? Do you worry about money? Have you thought about what you'll do long term? Keep the house? Move somewhere smaller?" I kept my answers vague. "Thomas took care of things. I'm comfortable. I'm not sure yet." Then the questions got more specific. We were having dinner at his place when Frank stopped by, as he often did. Richard was in the kitchen, and Frank sat across from me at the dining table. "Eleanor," he said, leaning forward, "can I ask you something? Richard's too polite to bring it up, but I'm not. Did Thomas leave you set up? Because my brother really cares about you, and he doesn't want to be a burden, but he also doesn't want you to struggle." I felt my spine stiffen. "I'm not struggling, Frank." Right. But I mean, did he have life insurance? Because post office guys usually do, through the union. My buddy's brother worked there, got a nice payout when he retired. "Thomas was responsible," I said carefully. "I'm taken care of." "How much are we talking?" "6 figures?" The question was so direct, so inappropriate, that I actually gasped. "Frank, that's really not appropriate." Richard came back in then with dessert, and Frank switched topics immediately, all smiles. But I'd seen it, the predatory gleam. That night, Richard drove me home. As I was getting out of the car, he touched my hand. "I'm sorry about Frank," he said. "He can be direct, but he means well. He just worries about me, about whether I'm making smart decisions." "Smart decisions about what?" Richard smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing. Ignore him. I'll talk to him." But Frank didn't stop. Over the next month, one or both of them would bring up money in roundabout ways. Richard suggested we take a cruise together, and when I hesitated about the cost, he said, "Don't worry about money. If you have it, great. If not, I can cover it. I just want to know where we stand." Frank started talking about investment opportunities. "Eleanor, I don't know what Thomas left you, but if you've got 50, 60,000 sitting in a regular savings account, you're losing money to inflation. I know a guy." I kept deflecting. Something felt wrong. Then one Sunday, I went to Richard's apartment for brunch. He'd given me a key months earlier. When I let myself in, I heard voices in the study. The door was cracked. "She's being cagey about it." That was Frank's voice. "I know," I've asked. She won't say. "Richard, union life insurance for a 34-year career? Had to be at least $500,000, maybe more." My blood went cold. "The house is paid off," Richard said. "She mentioned that early on, so she's got equity there, probably $250, plus whatever the payout was. We could be looking at $750,000, maybe more. And the kids? Both out of state. Not close. She sees them maybe twice a year. Beneficiaries? I'd assume the kids. But that can be changed." I stood frozen in the hallway. They were quiet for a moment. Then Frank spoke again. "You need to marry her. Lock it down. Then we work on the beneficiary change. After that," he trailed off. "After that what?" Richard's voice was quieter now. "You know what? Same as before. It worked twice. It'll work again." My heart was pounding so hard I thought they'd hear it. I backed toward the door as quietly as I could, then left, pulling it shut softly behind me. I sat in my car shaking for 10 minutes before I could drive. Same as before. It worked twice. I went home and did what I should have done the moment things felt off. I Googled Richard. Richard Morrison, Columbus, Ohio. 60 years old. The first few results were normal. Facebook, LinkedIn, an obituary for his wife Patricia. Then I found it. Buried on page 3. A news article from 6 years ago. Investigation continues in death of Westerville woman. Margaret Hendricks, 62, had died in what was initially ruled an accidental fall while hiking with her fiancé, Richard Morrison. They'd been engaged for 3 months. Margaret had been a widow. Her adult children contested the circumstances, noting that Richard had recently been added as a beneficiary to her life insurance policy. The investigation had gone nowhere. Accidental death. I kept searching, my hands trembling. 4 years before that, another article. Smaller paper, different county. Widow dies in home accident. Carol Brennan, 58, had fallen down her basement stairs. She'd been dating Richard Morrison for 8 months. She had no children. Her sister told reporters that Carol had just changed her will to include Richard. I thought I was going to be sick. They'd done this before. Twice. And I was next. I sat at my kitchen table until midnight, my mind racing. I had to be smart. I couldn't just confront them or run. I needed proof. I needed help. The next morning, I called the one person I knew I could trust. My son Michael. He's a lawyer. I told him everything. "Mom," he said, his voice tight with anger, "you need to go to the police, now." With what? A conversation I overheard? 2 old news articles about accidents? They'll say I'm a paranoid old woman. Then we make them take you seriously. Michael flew up that weekend. He brought his investigator friend, a woman named Donna who specialized in fraud cases. We sat in my living room and made a plan. First, I needed to keep Richard close. Not break up, not act suspicious. I needed to see what they'd do next. Second, I needed documentation, recordings if possible. Third, we needed to find Carol's sister and Margaret's children. If we could establish a pattern, we had something. "Mom," Michael said, gripping my hands, "you're going to wear a wire. Every single time you're with him from now on." Donna set me up with a small recording device that looked like a hearing aid. She taught me how to turn it on discreetly. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role of my life. I was still sweet Eleanor, still grieving Thomas, still falling for Richard's charm. And I recorded everything. Richard started pushing harder about financial planning. We should think about the future together. Maybe I should consider moving in with him, renting out my house for income. Had I updated my will recently? Did I have a living trust? Frank came by more often, always with suggestions, always steering conversations toward money. Then one night, Richard proposed. We were at a nice restaurant. He got down on one knee, produced a simple diamond ring. "Eleanor," he said, "I know we both lost the loves of our lives, but I think we've found something special. I don't want to spend my remaining years alone. Marry me." People at nearby tables applauded. The waiter brought champagne. I said yes. The recording device captured everything. Michael was furious when I told him, "Mom, you can't actually marry this man." "I'm not going to," I said. "But they need to think I will. We need more." Richard wanted a short engagement. 2 months. At our age, he said, why wait? He also brought up the beneficiary conversation. "Eleanor, I know this is morbid, but we should both update our policies. Make sure we're taken care of if something happens." "I'll call my lawyer," I said, smiling. "You're right. We should be practical." Instead, I called Donna. "They're moving. We need to move faster." Donna had been busy. She'd found Carol Brennan's sister, Linda. She agreed to meet with us. Linda was 65, bitter and heartbroken. "I knew something was wrong," she told us in her living room. Carol was careful. She wouldn't have just fallen downstairs. She walked every day. And then that man inherited $50,000 in her car. The police said there was no evidence of foul play. But I knew. "Did Carol ever mention Richard's brother?" Donna asked. Linda's eyes widened. "Frank." "Yes. He was always around." Carol mentioned feeling pressured to invest money with him. She said Richard would get upset when she refused, said she didn't trust them. We found Margaret Hendricks's daughter next. Her name was Joyce, and she lived in Cleveland. She was more reserved than Linda, but the story was hauntingly similar. "My mother was happy with Richard at first," Joyce said. "Then his brother got involved. They wanted her to invest in some business venture. She was starting to have doubts. She told me 2 weeks before she died that she thought Richard was more interested in her late father's life insurance than in her." "What happened on the hike?" Donna asked. "They said she slipped on wet rocks near a cliff edge. Richard was too far behind to catch her. But my mother was an experienced hiker. She wouldn't have been careless. And Richard insisted on a closed casket, said the fall had been too traumatic. The pattern was clear. Widows with money, whirlwind relationships, brother Frank always in the background, financial pressure, quick engagements, changes to beneficiaries, then convenient accidents. Now we just needed to catch them planning mine. The opportunity came 3 weeks before the wedding. Richard suggested a pre-wedding getaway, just us, to relax before the chaos. I know a beautiful cabin in Hocking Hills, very private. We can hike, just enjoy nature. Every alarm bell in my head went off. But I smiled and said, "That sounds wonderful," I told Michael. He told the police. Finally, they were interested. With the pattern we'd established, the recordings I had, and now what looked like a potential third attempt, Detective Harrison from Columbus PD agreed to help. "We'll have officers in the area," she said. "Plain clothes. If anything happens, if you feel threatened at all, you press this." She gave me a panic button disguised as a keychain. "And keep recording everything." The night before we were supposed to leave, Frank came to Richard's apartment while I was there. They thought I was in the bathroom, but I'd left my purse with the recording device on the couch. "The trail I scouted is perfect," Frank said. "Steep drop-off, rocky, isolated. You take her out early, say you want to catch the sunrise. I'll already be positioned. When you give the signal?" "I know the plan," Richard said, irritated. "Same as the others." "And you're sure about the beneficiary?" "She changed it last week. Showed me the paperwork. I'm primary. Her kids are secondary contingent. If something happens before the wedding, I still get the $50,000 she has in her immediate account. After the wedding, I'll have access to everything else through probate." "How much total are we talking?" "She's being careful about details, but I'd estimate 700,000–800,000, maybe more." Frank whistled. "Split 3 ways with my financing cut, we're each walking with $250,000. Not bad for 6 months of work. 3 ways. There was a third person. Is she ready?" Richard asked. "Jennifer's always ready. She's done this with us 3 times now. She knows how to play grieving girlfriend at a funeral. My hands went numb. There was a woman involved too, Jennifer, a third conspirator. When I came out of the bathroom, Frank was gone, and Richard was all smiles. Ready for our trip tomorrow, sweetheart? Can't wait, I said. That night, I met with Detective Harrison and Michael. I played them the recording. We've got them, Harrison said, but we need to catch them in the act. Are you willing to go through with this, Mrs. Thompson? I thought about Carol, about Margaret, about the lives cut short so these predators could profit. Yes, I said. I'll do it. The next morning, Richard picked me up at 6 a.m. The drive to Hocking Hills took about an hour. He was chatty, excited, talked about our wedding, our future. Every word felt like poison. We arrived at the cabin around 7:30. It was remote, beautiful, exactly the kind of place where someone could have an accident and no one would question it. Let's get settled and then take that sunrise hike, Richard said. There's a spectacular overlook about a mile up the trail. I saw the plainclothes officers in the parking area, pretending to organize their own gear. I felt the panic button in my pocket. We started hiking. The trail was indeed beautiful, winding through trees, alongside a creek. Then it started to climb, getting steeper, rockier. Richard kept encouraging me. You're doing great, Ellie. Almost there. Then I saw Frank. He was standing off the trail, partially hidden by trees, about 50 yards ahead. He saw us and melted back into the forest. Richard's hand was on my lower back, supposedly to help me, but I could feel the tension in it. We reached the overlook. It was a jutting rock formation with a sheer drop of maybe 60 feet into a rocky ravine below. Beautiful and deadly. Wow, I said, stepping carefully close to the edge, making sure there was plenty of distance between me and Richard. Careful, he said, moving closer. That's when I heard the rustle behind us. Frank, moving into position. Richard moved closer still. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. What's that? My hand was in my pocket, on the panic button. I'm sorry. His hand reached out. I pressed the button and threw myself backward, away from the edge, screaming. Richard lunged, but I'd moved too fast. Frank came rushing from the trees. And then the woods erupted with police. Freeze! Police! Hands up! Officers in tactical gear emerged from everywhere. Richard and Frank were on the ground in seconds, hands cuffed behind their backs. Detective Harrison walked up to me. You okay, Mrs. Thompson? I was shaking but unharmed. Yes, thank you. They found Jennifer back at the cabin, already rehearsing her role as Richard's grieving girlfriend. She broke down when they played her the recording of her role in the conspiracy. Over the next few months, everything unraveled. Jennifer confessed to being involved in all 3 murders. She'd been Richard's partner for nearly a decade, helping him identify, court, and kill wealthy widows. Frank helped with planning and execution. They'd split the proceeds each time. Carol Brennan hadn't fallen down the stairs. Frank had pushed her while Richard was conveniently at the store, establishing an alibi. Margaret Hendricks hadn't slipped while hiking. Richard had pushed her while Frank watched from a distance to make sure she didn't survive the fall. Both women's cases were reopened. Frank and Richard were charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Jennifer was charged as an accessory to all 3. The trials took over a year. I testified at all of them. So did Linda and Joyce. The recordings were played in court. The pattern was undeniable. All 3 were convicted. Richard and Frank got life without parole. Jennifer got 30 years. After it was all over, Michael asked me how I'd known to be cautious, to protect myself when so many others hadn't. I thought about it for a long time before answering. Thomas used to say that if something feels wrong, it probably is, I told him. And he also said to always keep something back, something that's just yours. I think he meant it emotionally, but it works financially too. If I'd told Richard about the money right away, if I'd trusted blindly just because I was lonely and wanted to believe in love again, I'd be dead. Carol and Margaret trusted. They changed their beneficiaries. They went on those trips. They died. You outsmarted them, Michael said. No, I said. I just remembered that love shouldn't come with financial interrogations. Real love doesn't push. Real love doesn't rush. Real love doesn't make you feel like you have to prove your worth with money. I'm 62 years old now. I still live in my house in Columbus. I see my kids more often now. Sarah came to stay for 2 weeks last summer, and Michael visits every month. I haven't dated since. Maybe I will someday, maybe I won't. But if I do, I'll know the red flags. I'll know the questions that are really assessments. I'll know the difference between genuine interest and calculated targeting. The money Thomas left me is still mostly untouched. I added Linda and Joyce to a foundation I created that helps widows understand financial safety and recognize exploitation. We give workshops. We share stories. We teach women that protecting yourself isn't paranoia, it's wisdom. People sometimes ask me if I regret not trusting Richard, if I feel bad about setting him up. The answer is no. He made his choices long before he met me. He killed 2 women. He was planning to kill me. My only regret is that I couldn't save Carol and Margaret. But I saved the women who would have come after me. Because make no mistake, I wouldn't have been the last. Men like Richard don't stop. They just find new victims. I spoke at Linda's house last month, at a gathering of women who'd lost sisters, mothers, friends to suspicious circumstances. Women who'd been told they were paranoid, that they were imagining things, that their loved ones had just been unlucky. I told them about Thomas, about Richard, about the moment I overheard that conversation and had to make a choice. Trust what I was hearing or doubt myself. Every woman in this room has been taught to be nice, I said, to not make waves, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to prioritize other people's comfort over our own safety. But that conditioning nearly killed me. It did kill Carol and Margaret. One woman raised her hand. How do you trust anyone again? You trust yourself first, I said. You trust your instincts. You trust that if something feels wrong, you have every right to protect yourself, even if it seems rude or paranoid or unkind. Being alive and rude is better than being dead and polite. I still have the ring Richard gave me. The police returned it after the trial. It's in a drawer in my bedroom, a reminder. Not of him, but of me. Of the moment I chose to listen to my gut instead of my loneliness. The moment I chose my safety over the fantasy of not being alone. I wasn't his victim. I was his reckoning. And I'm still here to tell the story.